Hi, folks. Dana Torgerson here with ArmorCode for another Let's Talk ASPM podcast. I have the honor today with Nikhil Gupta, my CEO here of ArmorCode, joining us here at RSA Conference 2025. We're live literally in the booth, and we're enjoying all the great conversations and connections this week. But I wanted to grab Nikhil with all this buzz and all the hoopla, and we've had a couple of other podcasts where we're talking about the buzzword of the year seems to be AI. What are your thoughts on AI, and how did we get here? I imagine it's about problem solving and use case identification, but you also wrote a blog on this earlier this week that folks can check out if you want at armorcode.com. Tell me more about the situation that we found ourselves in as a cybersecurity community.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dana, for having me, and thanks for the audience for listening. Of course, this conversation is incomplete today if you're not talking about AI, but I'll share the perspective, having worked with several hundreds of Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 customers and prospects. So one of the biggest trends that what has been happening here is that recently, and these are some of the anecdotal comments and stats, so don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But talking to one of the largest credit card company CISO just a couple of weeks ago, and during the conversation we found out that in last 2 years the amount of code written by AI is more than cumulative 10 years by humans.
Wow.
So just let it sink in, right? So that's the kind
a lot of data.
And now what happens here is why would you think that hey, this is great, you will basically people will be obsolete, humans coders will be obsolete and all, and people are making statement that 80% code will be written by AI and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think so it's a great and ambitious goal to have, but what are the challenges that it brings?
Sure.
Now what happens here is, like, if you look at between the security and the engineering organization is incentivized to develop code faster, cooler, and everything else.
That's right.
And they get excited by getting the code deployed and making new cool features. But whereas security, historically, they were been petrified because when the code is moving so fast, then how do you take care of the code?
Sure.
And now that speed has gone 10x and 100x, and as is itself, there was one AppSec engineer to 200 developers. And now if you talk about it, there will be probably one AppSec engineer to 200 engineers and 2,000 agents.
That's right, yes.
So
the rise of the agents as well, yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't know, for those of you who have not had an opportunity, but there was a recent Purple Book event that happened where, ex-Google leader Phil Venables mentioned, and they were discussing along with Anshul on the Purple Book community, that people are contemplating there will be 40 billion with a B agents out over there with 8 billion.
Amazing.
Now what all it will does here is it will basically add all of this code and add a lot of stress on the security team. So that's is right. Where the number of code lines are increasing, but the security vulnerabilities will increase as well. And that is where you need AI to fight with AI, or AI to help problems created with AI.
Sure.
And that is the perspective that we learned, and this is where we are taking a next step, and we launched our agentic AI solution Anya to help solve those problems for the security community.
That's amazing. And so you've got a lot of folks out there that really never had a lot of time to do the mission, and there might not have been a lot of people to do the mission. We're still finding ourselves with upside down. There's a lot of cybersecurity jobs that have not been filled, can't find enough people. And so it sounds like it's just going to exacerbate the problem more and more. And that's exactly what we heard at the PBC community event, our Connect event earlier this week here. What about Anya? Describe how we came up with Anya and how she can be applied for maybe the CISO role or the security leader role.
Yeah, so again, so that's a very good question over here. So now what happens here is several years ago, not too long ago, MGM breach happened, right? And this is all public information.
That's true.
Now what happens here is anytime when a large beast like MGM, Clorox, and any company's breach happen, the first instance is the CISO gets asked by the board, is my business is at risk?
Makes sense, yeah.
And the first thing they will say, okay, they don't care whether it was that business is running on AS400, IBM AS400.
Yeah.
And by the way, still probably 70% of Fortune 500 are running on AS400.
The backbone for some businesses still,
right. And then, or whether it's running in data center or it's running in public cloud or using an AI. LLM.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't care whether it's a monolithic architecture or microservices architecture.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what you care about is, do we have similar risk in our organization? So,
Yeah.
there are other large, casinos,
Yeah.
and one of them is our customer. And when they took 30 days and 30 people to get to the bottom of it, the impact of
Of the
breach,
the
because
public breach. Yeah.
of other public breach.
Yeah.
Now, in a scenario like that, and unfortunately, more and more of those breaches will happen.
True.
So, having said that, now you need really a agentic AI or AI kind of solution to help you with that. Now, in a non-AI world,
Yeah.
the way it would happen here is this: board asks the CISO will ask their VP of AppSec, infrastructure, and all. Try to get an understanding of first what happens is on the research
Yeah.
outside, which is done. Then they will go back and internally look into the thousands of applications that they have in infrastructure where there is an impact, and then ultimately assign it to somebody to fix a problem.
Sure.
Right? Now that's is a very cumbersome process.
Oh
now,
yeah. I mean, what you just described, Nikhil. You've got different business units, different teams, different leadership. Some made certain decisions and purchases for some source tools. I bet there's probably other tools. How would you, as a company, how is a CISO keeping all that stuff straight?
Yeah, and that's the kind of their companies are drowning in vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And so as a result, what happens here is that vulnerabilities number is going to just increase significantly.
Yeah.
Historically, people have been using Excel sheet, Jiras, and stuff like that.
True.
And that's
Yeah.
where they were managing one way or the other, but that problem is becoming 10x or even 100x worse.
Got it.
Now imagine in a world that you're a CISO, you're attending RSA conference,
Yeah.
along with your other counterparts, and God forbid any breach happens.
Yep.
And board calls you. Now instead of just reading, kind of getting up in the middle of an interview or something like that,
Exactly. Yeah.
what you could do here is imagine you have your virtual security champion or assistant,
Yeah.
where you could just call and say like, are we impacted by MGM breach? And
Just
now
using simple language.
exactly
Conversational.
simple conversational English language, and then it just triggers and it goes out.
Yep.
Does all the research which is out there. Now you have a generation 1 AI, now we are talking about generation 2 AI.
Sure.
Where earlier it was more of pattern matching. Nowadays we are doing deep research. With deep research you go to RAG and get that information, analyze, break it into multiple tasks and other things.
Yeah.
Now imagine you get all the research done.
Yep.
Second thing here is, instead of CISO calling the VP of AppSec, infrastructure, and all those things, it automatically goes inside and looks at 3,000 or 300,000 application and a million infrastructure assets, and find out that, okay, these were issues. There were 5 applications which out of 5,000 which are kind of critical
Yeah.
applications which has that particular incident.
Yep.
And then instead of having to go back through this 30 days of arduous process,
Yeah.
you can get all of this information here, and then you could just say that, Dana, fix this issue, and I know my normal service level agreement for a critical issue is like, let's say 48 hours, but
Yep.
this is very significant importance, and I'm approving it right now to fix it in 2 hours or 4 hours, and
Yeah.
then assign it to remediation team the task.
Yeah.
And it all goes all the way and figures it out that the code was last touched by Nikhil,
Yeah.
and it automatically is assigned to Nikhil. So
Wow.
all of that stuff, imagine what it is taking 30 days, 30 people in less than 30 seconds,
To shorten that all down.
shorten it all down.
Yeah.
And what it will do here is then it will free up the team to do what they do best. Because in AI, there is a huge importance and significance of human in the loop.
Yes.
So now that's an important aspect here, because what AI will do, learn and everything else, but at the end of the day, you cannot replace humans, at least in my opinion, next 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
But that's the experience that people have.
Yeah.
But then you are just required to put 1% of effort versus doing 100% effort. So
Makes
that
sense,
is
yeah.
where the vision is. Now why ArmorCode is very uniquely positioned is that when you are an organization of the sizes that we are talking about,
Yeah.
you may have grown through M&As by acquiring 3-5 different companies.
Sure.
And you may have your different security tool stack which you cannot standardize because the developers are using different languages, programming languages.
Somebody might be in Python.
Py-
Somebody might. Yeah.
And you may be finding out black duck for one, and you may find out SEMGREP for other tools.
Yeah.
By the way, with all due respect, we are all partners, so we are not taking any preferential
That's
treatment,
true.
but I'm just making some statement
Yeah.
here. Now, instead of all of that, now what happens here is all these you have, let's say, 5 scanners, SCA, 5 SAST, and 5 DAS scanners.
Yep.
Now, all of these solutions ultimately will come up with their agentic AI solution, but it will be within those tool vendors.
Thus, they're in a silo of sorts.
Exactly.
Okay.
And now, ArmorCode is a Switzerland of security. We have near 300 integrations.
Yep.
And because we do not compete with any of those scanners, we do have access to that information already. So what we could do here is we could say assign it to Dana,
Yep.
which is run by scanner X,
Yep.
and then assign it to Nikhil, and I'm writing in C language and you're writing in Python languages, and it's all assigned automatically,
Wow.
right?
Yep.
And so that's the piece, and so that's why ArmorCode is the industry's first agentic AI virtual security center, which can actually go across all the various different tools. So that's the unique nature, and this is where, it's built on ArmorCode's, the main foundational pillar of last 4 to 5 years.
Sure.
And 25 billion plus findings over there.
Processed through the platform, yeah.
Process to the platform, and being the independent AI analytics and governance layer.
Yep.
And that's why Anya is very different from any of the agentic AI solutions that we'll be hearing now.
Amazing. Maybe one last question for the audience at home. What would be next for Anya? What do you predict the direction that she'll be able to go in, and what she'll be able to help with in the future, in the coming year or a couple of years?
I wish it will cook food for me. Just kidding. But, it's possibilities are immense. Right?
Oh, yeah. I guess they would be limitless.
Exactly, and that's why Anya's name is actually on Hindi, which means limitless. So of course Anya is in German, Armen is very different languages,
Sure.
but it's a name in Sanskrit which means limitless.
Limitless, I love it.
So that's one of the reasons for naming Anya. Anya was that, and to
Yep.
your point here, the way industry is evolving,
Yep.
even to be very honest, even we cannot predict. So what we are doing is, and very recently our chief product officer, whom we have talked earlier,
Yep.
he just typed a question with, and customer was doing kind of testing the environment, like, can you write a report for my CISO? And he had a report for the CISO.
Just spat right out.
Just spit it out right like that. So again, their possibilities are limitless.
Sure.
And the way we look at here is that, again, it will be going into more and more deeper. Now we are working with several security leaders across Fortune 500, Fortune 50, and Fortune 1000 customers.
Sure, yeah.
And we are looking at it, and audiences, why don't you share what kind of challenges you have?
Yes.
And then we would love to incorporate that. So, and hopefully in, not 1 year, because things are moving so fast, maybe we are talking in 3 months.
We could be talking 3 to 4 months, folks. Yeah.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
in that particular case, we would already be 10x forward.
Exactly.
So I don't want to date out, like, instead of talking about what is 10 years vision with AI, you can't even talk it
You're
or
right.
tell in 3 months.
That is a good point. Well, thank you very much for unpacking Anya and agentic AI for the audience. I hope if you folks do have questions, take Nikhil up on his offer. Let us know how you would use Anya. And you can meet Anya by going to armorcode.com/meet-Anya, ANYA. And maybe we can put that as a graphic on the screen right now. But Nikhil, thanks again for your time.
Excellent.
And
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for everybody that's watching us. Remember to share, like, and subscribe to the podcast series, and we're going to have many more episodes for you coming up. Thank you very much, folks.